This is the 2021 Ford Mustang GT. Now the reason why I'm so excited about the one in behind me, couple things. First of all, it's antimatter blue. And I don't know about you, I absolutely love the look of this color. And the reason why is because it almost looks black. But when you get it under certain lights, it's a beautiful deep blue. And I am a huge fan of blue. I love the look of it. Now, before we get started, I want to give Formula Ford a huge shout out. Thank you for letting me use this vehicle in order to shoot the video today. You can find their contact details down below. Before we dive into the video as well, I want to thank you guys as always for helping to support the channel. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you give it a thumbs up and please consider sharing it with your social networks. And if you do it, drop down in the comment section down below because I've got a pretty cool giveaway planned for everybody who is sharing on social media. Now let's dive into it and see what the 2021 Ford Mustang GT has to offer. Now, when it comes down to it, the Mustang is going to have some standard technology regardless of if you're looking at the EcoBoost Mustang or if you're looking at the Mustang GT. Now, some things that are going to be standard, we do have the backup camera, there is that reverse sensing system, and then there also is the blind spot system. So the blind spot system, and there's a lane keeping system. So the lane keeping system essentially is going to help pull you in your lane. We're going to cover that one off in just a second, but look at the beauty of this car. Now, a couple things. This is the look of the GT Performance Pack in the 2021 Mustang. Now, Performance Pack Level 2, which was available in the 2020 trim levels, is no longer available. But let's take a dive into the Performance Pack to see what it looks like. So the Performance Pack in the 2021 Mustang does not have Magna-Ride, but you can add it on as an option if you'd like to. But let's take a little bit of a look at the Performance Pack and what's really included. So starting off, we do have these beautiful tires. So look at these things. So beautiful split spoke wheel. Now one thing, looking at the rubber, if you look at how deep the grooves are there. So this is absolutely a performance summer tire. You never want to be driving this thing specifically in the winter because it's just not going to be pretty. You're going to be slip sliding everywhere all over the place, but it is absolutely stunning. Now looking on the front side of things, as you can see there, we do have the Brembo 6 caliper brakes instead. So it would normally be 4, but you do have increased braking performance inside of this thing. Looking under the hood of the Performance Pack, so as you can see there, we do have this absolutely beautiful painted strut tower brace. Really nice look to it there. And you can't really make it out there just because of where it's sitting, but there is a larger radiator that's also included inside a Performance Pack Level 1. Now, a couple other things are going to be standard. Now, we can't obviously see some of these things, but the rear differential. So looking at it as a standard, so in the manual version of the vehicle, it's going to be a 3.55 axle ratio. And inside of the Performance Pack Level 2, in the manual, it bumps it up to a 3.73. And then on the automatic side of things, it's typically 3.15 that we'll see with an upgrade in the Performance Pack to a 3.55 instead. On top of that, there's unique tuning. We do have an upsized rear sway bar. So just underneath, we can just make it out. See where that pink tag is? That's going to be the upsized sway bar. So it gives you a little bit better stability as we go. On the front side of things, so one thing we won't be able to see, maybe, there is the K-brace. I'm not sure if it's viewable from where I'm pointing there. And then on the other side, we also do have those heavy-duty springs. So increased performance overall there. Now on top of that, we do have a performance rear wing. So you can see nice look to it there. Now that's going to be standard in the fastback. When you go for the convertible, the rear wing is deleted inside of the Performance Pack. Now on top of that, there are a few things on the inside to point out. As you can see there, we do have this beautiful spun aluminum look just along the top, as well as these gauges. So we've got an oil pressure and a vacuum gauge. And those are going to be standard inside a Performance Pack. Now starting off, taking a peek under the hood. So a couple things to point out. This thing is powered by a 5-liter V8 engine. It's naturally aspirated, which means that there's no turbo. However, turbo or supercharger, you've got more than enough room to throw under there, which would give you an insane performance boost. But as it sits, this thing's going to push out 460 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. So tons of power and performance inside of this thing stock, but if you want to give it a little bit of a boost, you've got the capabilities to easily do that. Now under the hood, we've got easy access to a few things. As you can see there, we can easily top up some fluids, we can check or change our oil, we can easily add in some windshield wiper fluid. We've got access to the fuse panel as well as the battery. So easy access to a number of different things as necessary. Now, when it comes down to filling up fuel inside of this thing, it is a performance vehicle. Now, minimum manufacturer's recommendation for this thing is 91 octane at a minimum. If you use a 91 or ideally a 93, you're gonna get even better performance. Now, if you use a lower octane, like an 87 or an 89, the issue is that that can cause all sorts of mechanical issues and mechanical breakdowns and things like that. Most notably, you might hear engine knocking. So if you're getting engine knocking from your Mustang, chances are that you're not using the proper fuel. So make sure you're gonna use either 91 or ideally that 93 octane because we are in a performance machine. Now, filling up is very straightforward. Just along the driver's side, as you can see, we're just gonna press, capless system, just insert your hose, lock it, and you're set to go from there. Next up, taking a peek at the key fob of the vehicle. So a few things to point out, because this is the 6-speed version, we are not gonna have remote start. Could you install it aftermarket? Yeah, but do you want to install remote start on a manual transmission vehicle? Yeah, absolutely not. And the big reason why is because what happens if you leave it in gear and go to remote start? Not a good thing. You're skipping forward, you're losing your car. If you've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you know what I'm talking about. Looking at the key fob there, as you can see, we've got our unlock button, our lock button, our trunk release, as well as our horn or our panic alarm button. On top of that, underneath, as you can see, we do have our emergency access key, which, if we ever needed to use the emergency access key, we would use it just along the bottom there. So literally all you would do is take the emergency access key, you'd plug it in underneath on the bottom there. That would pop this cap off, which would reveal an easy access for you to insert that key in order to be able to unlock the vehicle if, for whatever reason, the fob is dead. Taking a peek at the trunk of the vehicle, so it is actually kind of surprising how much stuff you can really fit inside of this thing. The dimensions are going to show up in just a second there. Let's pause for you to take a peek. So could you fit a set of golf clubs in this? Absolutely, which is kind of neat. But let's take a little bit of a deeper dive and a look into the back of this thing. Here we go. All right, so as you can see there, we've got quite a little bit of space in the back, like a surprising amount. We've got that beautiful woofer in the back as well, and we've also got this little tab we can lift up, which is going to give us that tire inflator kit. So that's going to be standard now, and as you can see there, we technically could add in, there is enough room for a mini spare if we really wanted to, but you do have this inflator kit, and on top of that, there also is Ford roadside assistance. So don't forget that you do have that as a Ford vehicle owner. Okay, next up, let's take a peek at something. Boom, I'm gonna pop this down, and I'm going to attempt to jump into the back of this thing. Ooh, that's tight. All right, so, a little bit tight back here. So I am 6 feet tall. I have the seats forward. I have absolutely zero space in the back. And as you can see, I am like really, really uncomfortable here. My head is pretty much smashing in the back in the rear window there. So if you've got people that are taller, you are absolutely not getting 4 people in the back of this thing. Unless it's people that you really don't like, or if they're maybe like vertically challenged a little bit shorter, they might be able to get back here. But if you're like taller than 5 feet, you are absolutely not going to comfortably be able to get into the back of the fastback version of the vehicle. Now, having said that, if you have people that are maybe a little bit taller, or a little bit shorter, I should say, driver passenger side, you could absolutely look at getting some more people in the back of this thing. But at the end of the day, this is not going to be a 4-person vehicle. But take a look at this. This is the midnight blue stitching. I absolutely love the look of this. So really, really solid look. There is the option to add in the Recaro seats if you really wanted to, but this one does not have that as an option. Now, taking a peek along the driver's side door, so a few things to point out. This one, because we're in the premium version of the vehicle, the 401, we do have our seat memory buttons there. So you can set up an individual seat profile for 3 different people, I should say. And that's going to be good. So what you can do is you can set your driver's seat preferences. You can set your side view mirror preferences, and then you press and hold either 1, 2, or 3, and it's going to remember your personal preferences there. We've got our unlock and our lock buttons, and then along the top, just our standard window adjusting buttons, as well as the ability to move those windows up or down. Taking a peek just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So first one is going to be for our fog lamps, so we can toggle our lamps on or off by pressing this button. And we also have our selector switch to figure out what's happening with our running lamps. All the way to the left is off, all the way to the right is auto, and then we've got some in-between settings. But what I recommend is keep it in the auto mode, and the big reason why is because the vehicle's automatically going to either give you the daytime or the nighttime running lamps, depending on how bright it is outside. On top of that, we also do have these little guys, so our dimmer switches. Those are going to make not only the instrument cluster, but also that Sync 3 screen brighter or darker as necessary. Moving down a little bit more, so a few things to point out. We do have a trunk release button, so we can easily pop that trunk if you don't want to use the key fob. And we also have, boom, sunglasses holder. Now this thing is actually going to be standard on every Mustang, regardless of if it's the EcoBoost or the GT. So this is one thing, most people don't even think about it, but boom, sunglasses holder, change, spokes, whatever the case may be, and then just lock it back into place. Adjusting the driver's seat inside of the Mustang GT is a very straightforward process. Left-hand side on the driver, right-hand side on the passenger, and because we're in the premium version of the vehicle, it's power. So the very first lever at the very front of the seat is going to allow us to bring the seat forwards or backwards. We can raise the seat up if we need to, or we can push it down in order to lower the seat down a little bit more. As we start to move back a little bit, we've got a circular button. That one is going to be for our power lumbar support, so we can give ourselves a little bit more stability in the lower back if we need it. And then in order to move the backrest forward and backwards, so that still is a manual process, but moving a little bit further back, we've got a lever. We're just gonna crank that lever. We can move it forward or backwards as necessary. Once you've got that perfect position, you're just gonna release it and you're set to go. Now, as I mentioned, once you've got your seat set up the way that you'd like to, as well as your side view mirrors, all you're gonna do is press and hold either 1, 2, or 3 to create your own personal profile. Now, adjusting the steering wheel inside of the Mustang is also very straightforward. By our right knee, as you can see there, we've got a little lever. All we're gonna do is take that lever, we're just gonna crank it down, and it's a telescopic wheel, so we can move it in and out, we can move it up and down. Same thing, once you've got that perfect position, you're just gonna take that lever and crank it back up into place. Now, one other thing to point out, in order to adjust the headrest, there is a way that we can do it. All we're gonna do is crank the headrest forward, and as you can see, it clicks, locks it into place. And then from there, we can adjust. In order to release it, we're just gonna pull it all the way forward, let it go, snaps back into place. It's really that simple. Okay, now this is the Sync 3 screen. So it's the same Sync 3 screen that we saw in last year's Mustang. So unfortunately, we're not wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as of yet, but hopefully that's going to be coming in a future generation. Now let's take a peek at the screen, figure out a little bit more about what's going on. Now this is, as I mentioned, so the 401 version of, the 401 version of the Mustang GT. If you went for the 300A, it would look very, very different. This whole setup would look different, but because we're in the 301 or higher, that's why we've got the look the way that it is. Now this is going to be the home screen for that Sync 3 system. So we're looking at the 401 version of the vehicle. It does have factory navigation. If you don't have factory navigation, this will look slightly differently. You'll have a compass up there, and then you'll have the audio settings in a different position instead. But with the 401 version, we do have factory navigation built in, and it is available on every trim level as well, which is a great option. But you do have the ability to hook up using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay if you want to use built-in maps. So using, let's say, Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze directly through this middle screen instead. Now, if for whatever reason you're not on this home screen, all you have to do is press that home button on the very top left-hand side, and that'll bring you back to this basic summary. So a few things to point out, we've got our basic audio settings there. So let's actually go through audio for a second so we can adjust our volume there. And we've got a few different things to do for sources. So we've got our AM, FM, Sirius XM, we've got a CD player still, which is so cool. And then we've also got our Bluetooth stereo. So we can choose between whatever active radio source or entertainment source we'd like. We can tune a few different ways. So we can tune using this button, we can tune using the rocker, or there's a command on our steering wheel to use our voice instead. So if we tune to a station, as you can see there, we've tuned, and in order to save a preset, all we're going to do is press and hold any of the available spots there, and it'll save it for us. So very straightforward. Now, as we start to move down, we've got our climate setting instead. So climate, tons of different options. We've got our auto setting, which is going to let the vehicle determine what the cabin temperature should be. We've got our menu button, which is going to bring up our max AC, our air circulation, or our max windshield defroster. Closing that out, we've got the ability to turn this on or off, and then we've also got a dual zone climate control. So if your driver and passenger like things a little bit different, let's say your passenger likes things a little bit warmer, you can adjust that if you'd like to. As you can see, the dual button is highlighted there. But let's say there's nobody in that seat and you need to get rid of the dual, all you're gonna do is literally just press that dual button and it'll default it to whatever the driver's side is set up at. As you can see there, our system's on, but we've got the ability to select if it's going to our windshield, our face, or to our feet. We've got a heated steering wheel in this thing, which is beautiful. We've got our rear window defroster as well as our air control, our AC. From there, we've also got our fan control, and then we've also got the ability to adjust, as you can see there, so we can adjust our temperature there. We can adjust it down there instead. And then just turning off. And that's going to be the basics of the climate control settings there. So we do have a digital display for it. We also do, moving down the console a little bit, have some climate control settings there also. You just have more options looking at it through this middle screen. Next up, adding a phone. So it's very straightforward to add a phone to this thing. You can connect through Bluetooth or through USB. USB really is if you're going to be using Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So let's figure out how we can add a phone in, because it is actually a very straightforward process. All we're going to do is press the Add Phone button.
Search for your vehicle on your device and select it once it is found.
Okay, and next up, all we're going to do is bring up Bluetooth on our phone. And this is going to show up in just a sec. There we go. So as you can see, I've got Ford Mustang. Just going to tap on Ford Mustang.
Confirm that the pin displayed on sync matches the pin displayed on your device.
Okay, so we need to make sure that those pin numbers match up, and they do. So we're going to hit pair, and yes.
For your safety, please stay alert to changing road conditions and use Sync's voice-activated features while your vehicle is in motion.
Okay, so my phone is almost connected. Next up, on my phone, as you can see there, it's asking me if I want to allow my contacts and favorites to sync. Yeah, I'm hooking my phone up. I want to do that, so hit allow. Excellent. Okay, now taking a look there, a few other things to point out. 911 assist, I always recommend turning that one on. The big reason why is because if your cell phone's connected and you're in an accident, the vehicle is automatically going to dial 911 for you and talk to the operator. So definitely recommend keeping that one on. And moving down, we've got our automatic contact download. Yeah, we want to make sure that happens. We want to make sure that our contacts are downloaded to the vehicle so that we can use our voice command prompts in order to make our phone calls. So we're just going to hit finish there. And as you can see, I'm now fully connected. We can look at my calls, my contacts, we can change phones, which is useful if you've got multiple devices connected. We've got our basic Siri commands as well. So that's really, really neat. I am connected. Now, one thing to point out, there are certain apps that will work through this middle screen through Bluetooth. We've got LiveX Live, Spotify, Pandora, things like that, that will work. So it's really, really neat. You don't have to rely on the factory radio or Sirius XM. You can go through your phone radio apps if you'd prefer to do that instead. So really, really cool. Now, in order to be able to set up Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, it's a very straightforward process. I'm going to start off on the Apple CarPlay side of things. So all we're going to do, just going to take our USB cable, and we're just going to plug it in to any of the available USB ports. So if we move down a little bit there, so I'm plugged into a USB port, and set you back up. Next up, all we're going to do, take the other end of the USB cable, we're just going to plug it in, boom, watch this. Okay, so we have to unlock the phone, so let's unlock. Boom. All right, so the only reason why that was happening is because I've got a little bit of a loose connection down there. I've got to replace this cable, but Apple CarPlay lets you use your phone in a way that allows you to stay focused on the road, so we're going to hit continue to that. And privacy terms and conditions. So we do need to accept that in order for Apple CarPlay to work, so we're going to hit agree. And just a second there. Next up, it's going to ask me if I want to allow CarPlay to work while my phone is locked. So we're going to hit allow. Boom. So as you can see, I am now connected. We can look at my phone, look at music. We've got Apple Maps, we've got Google Maps, we've got Waze. So we've got a ton of different options there. Now, one of the nice things about CarPlay is that it does give us the ability to customize some things. So if we look at my phone, we've got CarPlay there, we've got My Car, and we've got the ability to customize some things. So as you can see, we've got our generic layout there. But let's say if you have a tendency to, I don't know, maybe use Google Maps a little bit more than anything else, all we have to do is just take Google Maps, we can drive it up to the top there, and look at that, it's automatically updated Google Maps for us. So you can kind of delete things if you want to. If you never use Google Maps, you can completely delete it, and then you've got the ability to easily add more apps on the screen. Now, if for whatever reason you mess up too many things, you can reset it at the very top as well, which will reset you back to that basic factory default layout for this system. So really, really nice look, but I love the fact that you've got some hotkeys to some pretty cool things. We've got our direction button, we've got our voice button there. As we start to move back to our settings there, we've got a ton of different options. Now, in order to be able to remove the phone, or maybe you don't necessarily want to run off of Apple CarPlay, maybe you want to at least be charged up while not running off of CarPlay, all we're going to do is hit the Ford button. We can go back into our CarPlay preferences. We can launch into CarPlay by hitting Apple CarPlay. We can run off of our maps or using our phone there. Now, if we go into CarPlay settings, we can turn CarPlay off or we can remove my phone. So if we turn CarPlay off, what's going to happen is, watch this. So now instead of running off of our phone navigation, we can run off of our factory navigation instead. So the phone is still charging while we're not using CarPlay. So really straightforward. And then if we jump into phone, as you can see, we've got my phone connected still, and we can disconnect that in a few different ways. So by going to the settings on the bottom right, go to phone, We can view devices, and we've got my phone connected there. So any available phone would be there. We can either disconnect or we can completely remove. So we remove the phone. It is now completely disconnected. Going back to phone, we can now add something back in if we wanted to. And that's going to be the basics of how to set up Apple CarPlay inside of the Mustang. Connecting an Android device is essentially the exact same process. All we're going to do is make sure our Bluetooth is turned on. Perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to pair device. There we go, perfect. Available devices helps if I scroll. So we've got available devices there. We can click through to that and watch what happens.
Confirm that the pin displayed on sync matches the pin displayed on your device.
Boom, so same thing we just saw. So we have to make sure that our pin numbers match up, and they do. So we're gonna hit yes and okay.
For your safety, please stay alert to changing road conditions and use Sync's voice-activated features while your vehicle is in motion.
Okay, so I am now connected. Taking a look, do I want to allow access to my messages? Yeah, I want to make sure that I do that. And I am now connected through Android, now I'm connected to the vehicle, but not connected to Android Auto just yet. We've got one more option there, automatically download our contacts. Yes, we want to make sure we do that. Allow access to contacts. Yep, let's make sure we do that. And boom, I'm connected. So we've got my recent calls, my contacts. Same thing if we've got multiple phones, we can change that as necessary. We can use my phone assistant and things like that. Now, setting up Android Auto is the exact same process. We're gonna take our USB cable, we're gonna plug it into any of the available USB ports, and boom. Next up, all we're gonna do is take that USB cable, and we're just going to insert it into the phone. Boom. And we're going to give it just a sec, watch what happens. Oh, look at that. Android Auto extends the Android platform. So very similar to what we just saw on the iPhone side of things. So we're going to hit continue. And same thing, we need to agree in order for this to happen. So we're going to do a couple things in tandem. We're going to agree. We're also going to make sure we hit next on our phone. And there we go. We're just going to go for a second there. Now, a couple things to point out. My phone as of right now does not have it doesn't have a SIM card installed there. So you might get this error. If you ever do, just hit the cancel button. And as you can see there, it's going to automatically connect to Android Auto for you. It's a super weird thing that happens, but it's there. Okay, jumping into the home screen for a second there. Perfect, so we are now connected through Android Auto. So if I had active messages on here, this is just a phone that I'm using for these purposes, but we would have the ability, I should say, to look through messages, look through the phone calls, and a number of other things. So we've got our calendar, news, reminder, and a few things. We can look at our Google Maps if we wanted to. If you had the Waze app installed, you'd be able to use the Waze app directly through this middle screen. We can look at our notifications, or we can use Google Assistant. So very straightforward and very similar to what we just finished seeing on the Apple CarPlay side of things. Now, same thing, if we needed to get back to our Sync 3 home screen, we're just going to press the Sync button on the very top, and that brings us back to the home screen there. Now, a couple things to point out. Phone, as I mentioned, is not connected because I do not have an active SIM card there, but we could make phone calls with it technically if I was connected or I was close by to a Wi-Fi network. We've got maps, which we could run off of either the phone maps, so Android Auto. For the maps, we can run off of Google Maps, Waze, etc., directly through this middle screen. And we've also got our Android Auto preferences to jump back into Android Auto. Or we head back home and we can go to our Android Auto preferences. So same thing what we just saw on the Apple side of things. If we want to make sure we're charging up while we're not connected to Android Auto, we can simply toggle it off. We can completely remove the phone as well from Android Auto. And in order to remove the phone, very similar to what we just saw on the iPhone side of things. So what we do is, let's say if you're on the home screen, we're just going to go to Settings, Phone, View Devices. We've got my phone, disconnect, or we can completely remove, boom, and my phone is now completely disconnected. It really is that simple. Okay, next up, as we start to look into navigation. So the vehicle itself is equipped with factory navigation. If you don't have navigation on your vehicle, this button just wouldn't be there. But as I mentioned, you can still run off of Apple Maps, Google Maps, or Waze directly through this middle screen. So let's look at controls for a second there. We can easily search for an address if we want to. All we're gonna do is type it in as we go. Actually, let's type in, let's find a random address. So boom, show you how this works. So very straightforward. Now it does autocomplete as well, so we can start typing and we can just connect to an address there. We can save it as a favorite, or we can hit start in order for it to begin going. So
obey traffic laws, be alert, and use voice commands while driving.
There we go.
Please proceed to the highlighted route, and then the route guidance will start.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see there, we've got our route that's set up and active. In order to cancel the route, all we're gonna do is press the X button, cancel the route, and boom. Now canceled. Bringing up our controls again, we've got our menu button we can bring back up for a number of other settings. So we can change out our screen view, look at our traffic list, but the big one here is going to be our navigation settings. So navigation settings, we've got 3 different options. We've got our map preferences first and foremost. Big one there to point out would be our breadcrumbs or our point of interest icons. Breadcrumbs are pretty neat. So if you have breadcrumbs turned on, as you start to drive around, you'll notice a series of dots based off of the routes that you've taken. So that's a pretty cool feature. Other one is going to be our point of interest icons. So point of interest icons is going to let us know if we've got a nearby gas station, things like that. Moving into our route preferences, so we can either go the fastest, shortest, or the most eco-friendly route. We can look at HOV lanes, dynamic route guidance, and a number of other things. So things such as like avoiding freeways and toll roads. So if you don't like to go on toll roads, things like that, you can select that. And when you do a navigation through the factory navigation, it's automatically going to update it based off of whatever your preferences are there. Last one is going to be our nav preferences, so our guidance prompts. So as you're coming up to a turn, do you want a voice to say turning in 200 meters? Do you want it to be a chime as well? Do you want it to just be the voice or just the chime? So really a matter of preference. We can close that out and jump back, and that's going to be the basics of the navigation settings. We can search for addresses, we can look at our history, we can look at our favorites, point of interest icons, and then the big ones there are going to be our home and our work address. So we can set up individual addresses there. So one of the benefits of doing that is, let's say if we've got our home address set up, we can then use our voice command button on the steering wheel and say navigate home, and it'll automatically navigate to us to our home address. So that's a really, really cool feature that's available in this thing. And that is going to be the basics of the factory navigation. Moving into our apps, so there are certain apps that will work through this middle screen. Big one, again, make sure that you're physically connected either through USB or over Bluetooth, because some radio apps will work. Now, if for whatever reason your radio app isn't working, just make sure that your iPhone or your Android device is up to date with the latest iOS, and also your vehicle is also up to date. So getting into that, let's look at some of our basic settings there. So first of all, let's look at our sound settings. So sound, ton of different options there. We've got our treble, mid-range bass, all sorts of things that we can tweak out if we wanted to. Moving down, we've got our balance fade, speed compensation volume, etc. Speed compensated volume, what that's going to do is that's going to adjust the speed, the level of, I should say, of the volume, depending on how fast you're driving. Next up, we've got our clock settings. So clock settings, we can actually get to a couple of ways. We can either go to settings and clock, or we can just press the clock at the very top in order to jump into that. Increase or decrease an hour or a minute, change between AM or PM. We can switch to the military time if we'd prefer that. And then our daylight savings time zone as well. So daylight savings time, the vehicle's automatically going to either spring us forward or fall us back an hour, depending on the time of year. And then we've also got our automatic time zone update. So if we're going to the east or the west coast, the vehicle will automatically update our time zone as necessary. Next up, we've got our Bluetooth option, so we can turn Bluetooth off or we can connect other Bluetooth devices. We've got our phone, so that's where we would go if our phone was connected to change out different settings, or we can add a phone using that button, or we can press it down there. Next up, we've got our radio. So we've got our radio text and we've got our auto set as well. So the radio text is going to show, let's jump into our radio for a second, so audio. This is going to be the radio text. Whether or not that shows up, it's going to be a matter of preference. Now, if we change into our Sirius XM for a second, let's jump back into our settings. As you can see, that's now become a Sirius XM button instead. So we've got a number of different things. So we can do a parental lock if we wanted to. We can do all sorts of other things. So smart presets, we can look at some locked channels. So if there are channels that we don't want people listening to as we go, we can lock out certain ones. We can look at different information there as well. So if you're a big Sirius XM user, just knowing that when you change it out to a different source, that's going to affect what's happening with that button. So actually, let's go back into FM to show you again. Boom, it's jumped back into radio instead. Next up, we've got our navigation, which we've already touched base on those settings a few moments ago. Let's go back there. Boom. Boom, and mobile apps. So certain mobile apps will work through this middle screen. Enable apps via USB. We can turn that on or off as necessary. And we've also got a series of general settings. Boom, okay, general settings there. So general, we can switch between either English, Spanish, or French, Celsius, Fahrenheit, kilometers, or miles. That beep that we're getting, we can turn that one on or off if we don't like it. Automatic system updates. I absolutely recommend that you always keep the automatic system updates on. And the reason why is because it's automatically going to update the vehicle software for you if there's an active, or if there's an update. So when you're at home, connected through Wi-Fi at home, it's automatically going to download any updates that are currently available for the vehicles. Definitely recommend keeping that one on. Last one to point out is going to be our reset. So we can easily reset the vehicle if we need to. So if the middle screen's giving you issues, you can just do a master reset to bring it back to factory defaults. Really useful if you're selling your vehicle, you just master reset to bring it back to that default. Okay. Next up, we've got our 911 assist. As I mentioned, 911 assist with your phone connected, the vehicle's automatically going to dial 911 if it senses a collision. We've got our Wi-Fi as well as our automatic updates. So automatic updates will automatically update the software in the vehicle if it's available. Ford Pass Connect. The vehicle is equipped with an onboard modem, which gives you the ability to essentially use it as a wireless hotspot. So you can connect up to 10 devices, which is really cool. You do need a cell phone provider, so a data-only plan, in order to make that happen. So in Canada, it's Bell Mobility. I believe it's Verizon down in the States. We've got Apple CarPlay, so I was connected. We can remove my phone and watch what happens when I do that. I've got no more phones connected to the vehicle with Apple CarPlay, so it just disappears. So it's really that easy. And we've got, let's jump into our vehicle settings. So basic camera settings, onboard modem serial number, nothing too crazy there. And then we've got our display. So I love the look of the display, but if you find it a little bit too busy, you can simply turn the display off if you want to. Press in order to bring it back to life again. Background, we can change that out, and then we've got a few different modes. So as of right now, it's in the daytime mode because it's got that brighter white look to it. If we go to the nighttime, we've got this beautiful blue look instead. I personally would keep it on this nighttime mode, but it's a matter of preference. So automatic is automatically going to flip you between the daytime or the nighttime, depending on how bright it is outside. Moving back, we've also got our voice control. So voice control, I want you to listen to something for a second. 97.7.
Tuning to FM 97.7.
Okay, so it's changed the radio station for us, so that's confirmed. If we go to audio, boom, it's changed the station for us. But if we turn on advanced mode, I want you to listen again. 94.9. Boom. Okay, so we didn't get any notification, but look at this. It's changed the station. So advanced mode just means that we're not going to get quite as many prompts as we go. Phone confirmation, do you want to call such and such person, yes or no? And then our voice command list. So as we press the voice command button, this is the actual command list. So whether or not that one comes up is whether or not this is going to be toggled on or off. Last one is going to be our valet mode. So valet mode, essentially, enter in a 4-digit number. So enter something nice and challenging like 0000, and it locks the screen out. So if you've got a valet parking the vehicle, you essentially lock the screen out so people can't look through text messages, contacts, your previously saved addresses, things like that. And that is going to be the basics of this Sync 3 screen. Now, as we start to move down a little bit, so lots of things, as you can see off to the left-hand side, we've got our volume rocker, so we can so nice! Love the speaker sound in this thing. Now let's take a peek. These buttons are going to let you either change between radio stations or songs. We can turn the system on or off. We've also got the ability to press this in order to bring up our hotkey for our sound settings. And as you saw there, we can either press the back button or press this button again to get rid of it. And we've also got a CD eject button. Next up is going to be our tuning rocker. So if we wanted to, we can tune either this, we can manually tune this way if we wanted to, or we can use the voice command prompt on the steering wheel to tune instead. As we start to move down, because this is the GT Premium version of the vehicle, we've got heated and cooled front seats. I love it. If you were in the 300 or the 301 version, so the 301 version, you'd have heated seats, and the 300 version would look entirely different. I don't recommend getting the 300. It is very basic. It's gonna hurt your resale value. Go for the 301 or above, and you're gonna have this beautiful display here with a series of toggle switches along the bottom. We'll get to that in a second. So we do have some advanced climate control settings on the screen, and we've got some basic ones there. So we've got the ability to adjust the driver or passenger side by moving this up and down. Max windshield defroster, turn the system on or off. Max air conditioner, we can have the windshield defroster, rear window defroster, our fan control, AC, auto, and then our air circulation button. We've got our push button start. So whether you're looking at the 6-speed like what we're driving right now or the automatic, the push button start is going to be there. We've got a series of toggle switches. So the first one there is going to be for our 4-way blinkers. So we can toggle that on or off. Next one is going to be for our traction control. So we can turn our traction control on or off. This one, so the third one in, is going to be for our different drive modes. Or for our steering wheel mode, I should say. So we've got our normal steering, sport, or our comfort steering. And then lastly, it's going to be for our drive modes. So our drive modes are going to do a few different things. So we've got our normal, sport, track, drag, snow, wet, back to our normal drive mode again. And that's all through these selector switches. Moving down a tiny little bit, as you can see, we've got a USB port, and then we've also got our traditional cigarette lighter adapter. As I mentioned, this one is the 6-speed transmission, so we do have a reverse gear. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Moving down a tiny little bit, as you can see, we've got some cup holders, we've got our parking brake, and flipping you over there, we can crank this button in order to get access to this tray. As you can see there, we can yank this thing out if we need to, but laying that back down for a sec, we've got the ability to plug in some more USB ports there, and we've also got another cigarette lighter adapter. Click that back down. Next up, let's take a look at this big, gorgeous steering wheel. So I love the look of this thing. I think it looks fantastic. But one of the nice things is that because we're in the premium version of the vehicle, we do have a heated steering wheel, which is really, really nice. Starting off on the left-hand side, we've got the ability to change between either active stations or songs. We can increase or decrease the volume if we want to. And we've also got the ability to press that in order to mute the audio if we need to. Now, because of the vehicle packages that we've got, we also do have adaptive cruise control. Adaptive cruise with a manual transmission is a little bit tricky. It's still doable, but I really only recommend using it when you're on the highway, so we can turn it on or off. So if we turn the adaptive cruise on for a second there, so as you can see, it has turned that system on. We can see that right in the middle there. We know it's on when we've got those lanes. And this one is going to let us tweak how close or how far we are riding away from the vehicle that's in front of us. So you can see that adjusting as we go. We can either increase or decrease 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. If for whatever reason you have to brake, the adaptive cruise control system will automatically brake you, but because we're in a manual vehicle, you might have to downshift as necessary. So just press the resume in order to do that, or we can turn the system off completely. Looking off to the right-hand side, so a few things to point out. We've got our up and down button, which are going to tweak the screens in the middle there. So we can use that in order to navigate this middle screen. This is going to be our basic back button, and then this one is our voice command button. So let's actually go through some of the basics there. So as you can see, we've got our trip 1 and 2, we've got our tire pressure, our basic screen. So if you're finding it a little bit too busy, we can go to this. It's essentially just a naked screen. And moving up and down, if we want to reset a trip, all we're going to do is press and hold the OK button. 1, 2, 3, and boom, we're reset. We've got some different trips there, and we've got the ability to easily reset those as we'd like to. This is going to be our basic back button, which we can't use yet. I'll get to that one in just a second. This is going to be our navigation button. So if we hit the nav button, as you can see there, we've got the ability to go to my home address, previous destinations, etc. Now watch this. So we're going to look at this navigation route.
Please proceed to the highlighted route, and then the route guidance will start.
Okay, so it's showing me as of right now, you can just kind of make it out that I'm off route. So one of the interesting things about this is that as we start to drive, it'll dynamically update this for us. So it'll let us know when an upcoming turn is going, which is really, really cool. Pressing that nav button again will bring us back up, and we can cancel the route if we want to. As you can see, it's now canceled out. The other buttons, so we're going to start off, these guys there are going to be to either answer a phone call or we can hang up on a phone call. And we've also got our audio button. So I'm kind of jumping into weird spots for a second, but it's done with a reason. So looking at our audio button there, as you can see, we've got AM, FM, Sirius XM. If our phone was connected, it would show up. And if our CD was in, that would also show up as well. But we don't have a CD in, and my phone's no longer connected, which is why those are no longer options. The button on the bottom left-hand side is going to be for our settings. So pressing that, we've got a series of different options there. So we've got our trip and fuel info. So if we go back to that, so we've got our trip info. Moving back, we've got our driver assistance settings. So the auto engine off. If we're stopped for an extended period of time, the vehicle may kill off power to the engine. We can turn that one on or off if we'd like to. The blind spot system is an interesting one. So let me show you that one for a second. So we turn the blind spot on and off. So as you can see there, see that orange? It's highlighting along the side there. So that lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. Pre-collision assist works a few different ways. So if the vehicle senses a potential collision, it may actively brake for you. We can turn that one on or off if we'd like. Cross-traffic alert, if the vehicle senses that something's coming perpendicular, it'll automatically let you know that there's a potential collision. You can turn that one off if you'd like to. Cruise control, 2 different types, either are normal or adaptive. When we use normal cruise control, these buttons essentially work the same way. We can turn cruise control on or off and then set it as necessary, but the distance indicators wouldn't work. On the adaptive cruise control, as I mentioned, set it and forget it cruise, but it's a little bit more challenging when we're in that 6-speed. Moving back, we've got our driver alert. So driver alert, if we get too many warnings letting us know we're crossing over into lanes too many times, it'll tell us we should probably brake. Next up, as you can see there, we've got our hill start assist. So because we're in a 6-speed, hill start assist is essentially going to help us stay in place in order to change gears as we go. Our rear parking aid, let's switch into reverse for a second to show you. There we go. So as you can see, we've got a series of different aids and guidances and things like that. So if we didn't want those, we can easily select them. We can toggle them on or off if we'd like to. We've also got a lane keeping system that works 3 different ways. So way number 1 is an alert. So if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, you'll get a little bit of a steering wheel shake, almost as if you're running over a rumble pavement. So it'll shake it a little bit. The aid will actually recenter you and pull you back into your lane, and then the alert and the aid will do both. So you'll get a steering wheel shake, but it'll also pull you back in and recenter you in your lane. Moving back, we've got the intensity of that steering wheel shake, so either a high, normal, or a low intensity. And then we've got our wipers. So courtesy wipe, if we've got our windshield wipers going, and we stop it. It'll take a few seconds and then it'll give us one more just to clear away any sort of excess we might have on there. And then our rain sensing wipers, what that'll do is that's automatically going to adjust the windshield wiper depending on how much rain is hitting that windshield when we use it in tandem with this little guy. And we can go back there, and that's the basics of the driver assistance. We've got the ability to add in miles per hour as well, or if you're in the States, the ability to add in kilometers per hour. And then we've got some advanced settings. So we've got some vehicle settings, so our alarm, we can ask on exit, our easy entry exit. If we've got the easy entry exit on there, what'll happen is when we turn the vehicle off, it'll actually slide the seat back for us in order to make it easier to get in and out. Intelligent access has got to do with the key fob. We've got our lighting, so our auto lamp delay. So when we lock the vehicle, do our lamps stay on for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 120 seconds, or do they immediately turn off? And then our auto high beams. So we've got the ability to flick our high beams on or off as necessary there. We can push away, etc. But the vehicle's got auto high beams, which means what it'll do is it'll automatically turn the high beams on as necessary, and then it'll automatically dim them before turning them off completely. So really, really cool. I do recommend keeping that auto high beam setting on, but again, really a matter of preference there. Our locks, we've got a few different things. So the big one is going to be, so our auto unlock as we start to move towards the vehicle with the fob on us. Our mislock, if we don't have the door shut properly and we go to lock it, it'll give us a double chime letting us know that we haven't shut a door properly. Our remote unlock, when we unlock the vehicle, do all doors become unlocked, or is it just the driver door? And we've also got our switch inhibitor. So switch inhibitor, yeah, no biggie there, keep it on. Oil life reset, so as we change our oil, we've got the ability to adjust that as necessary, reset it. Tire mobility kit, so it should be replaced every 4 years if it's not in use, so just keep that set as its factory default. Our windows, we've got the ability to use our key fob in order to remote open the windows. Let's jump outside to see how that looks. In order to use the key fob to roll down the windows, it's a very straightforward process. So what we're going to do is press the unlock button twice. On the second button press, we're going to hold. So 1, 2, and hold. Watch this. Bam! Auto window down. Such a great feature. Now, one thing to note, it is auto window down. You can't press the lock button and raise them back up. So it's auto down, and then you just have to manually lift them back up instead. So really, really cool feature. Next up, oh, that is actually the basics of the vehicle. Next up are our My Key settings. So the My Key settings give us the ability to set up certain limitations for a key fob. So it's tied specifically to the key fob. So let's say if you wanted to have it so that, well, maybe the radio wouldn't turn on unless the seatbelt's plugged in. You've got the capabilities to do that all through setting up My Key. Display setup, we've got the ability to tweak some things a little bit. So we've got our gear, we've got our RPM or none. So let me show you what that looks like now. Boom, as you can see, that's tweaked out. So we've got the ability to tweak this thing out quite a little bit, and this is just the basics. As we get into the pony mode, it's gonna change it out completely. So you've got the ability what's happening there, so either our RPM or our gear. We can look at our measurement units, so either miles in gallons, liters per 100, temperature, Celsius or Fahrenheit, our tire pressure, and language, English, Spanish, or French. Those are gonna be the basics of the essential settings there on the steering wheel. Now, as we press this pony button, watch what happens there. So pony button, we've got a series of different things. So we've got my mode, depending on the mode that you're in there, so it will show as active. Moving into different exhaust modes. So this one does have the active valve performance exhaust, which is going to give us 4 different options. So we've got quiet, normal, sport, track, and then our quiet start. So quiet start is kind of neat. So if you live in a neighborhood where your neighbors are going to complain, you're going to potentially wake up a kid. Maybe you don't want to be, your neighbors. The big one is going to be your neighbors complaining that your Mustang's too loud. You can have it start on quiet instead, and then you can set a certain quiet time. So really, really neat. So if you tend to leave early in the morning, you don't want to wake up the neighbors, the family, etc. You've got the capabilities to set up when the quiet time or when the quiet exhaust will run. But let's hop outside of the vehicle for a second for you to figure out what those sound like. So really, really cool. Next up, we've got some basic track apps. So we've got acceleration timers, braking performance, line locks, and all sorts of other things. So really, really cool. If you're going to be using this thing on the track, it's nice to know that you've got some really amazing settings. You've got a performance shift indicator, letting you know different shift points. So what that'll happen is, this is specifically in the 6-speed, but as you hit a certain RPM threshold, it'll chime letting you know that it's an ideal time for you to shift. And then shift light mode, so that'll tweak out as it tells you to shift. So really, really neat. Launch control. So launch control, you can turn that one on or off. I can't test drive this vehicle as of yet, but when I can, you bet your butt, I'm going to be updating, I'm going to be putting on another video showing you how launch control and all of these other things work. Rev match, as we start to change gears, so as we shift up, down, or so as we shift down, it'll automatically rev the engine for us. So it sounds a little bit interesting. I'm going to show you what that's like on a test drive. We've got our gauges, so we've got the ability to show different gauges there, which we're already showing. And our pony mode, we've got different colors. So we can change between active colors as well. Let's say if you're a bigger fan of red, orange, etc., you've got the capabilities to do that. And then we've got some ambient light. So ambient light is going to be different positions inside of the vehicle, different colors as well. So again, really a matter of preference, what you want that to look like. You can turn that one on or off as necessary. And that's going to show up, as I mentioned, just in different positions and different sides of the vehicle. So cup holders are going to be the big one. So you'd have lighting in the cup holder there, down by our feet, along the side there as well. So on the handle. So a few different spots for that ambient light. And then we've also got the cluster appearance. So you can tweak it depending on what mode you're in. So if you're in sport mode, or I should say drive mode. Anyway, let me show you for a second there. So let's go back and let's tweak out the driving mode there. So along the bottom. So if we're in our sport mode, watch what happens. This tweaks up the look. When we're in our, let's go back to, I'll show you what it looks like again in normal mode. So it just looks different. So you can kind of lock in the position on what you like the look of. You can change colors, you can change a number of different things when you get into that active pony mode there. So really, really neat, but I'd say play around with these settings. Once you find something that you love, just keep it set up like that. It's really, really simple in order to be able to do that. And that is going to be the basics of this beautiful instrument cluster screen. Now, as we start to look over to the side, so because this is the manual vehicle, as you can see, we don't have paddle shifters. But if you were in the automatic, you would have a paddle shifter on both sides, allowing you to easily shift gears as necessary. Left turning stick, we've got a button on the very end. That's going to turn the lane keeping system on or off. So we know the system's on when you got those little lanes there, but the system itself may be on, but it doesn't become active until you hit about 60 kilometers an hour. Once you hit that speed, those are going to go green, and then as you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, it'll automatically gently pull you back into your lane. So it's a really, really useful feature. And then from there, we've got the ability to turn our high beams on or off as necessary. Along the right-hand side, so this one does have the rain sensing wipers, but we've got the ability to easily adjust the speed of the wipers there. We can pull in towards us in order to get those wipers going as well. Right now, as we start to move up overhead, so a few things to point out. As you can see there, we do have our garage door opener. So if you've got one at home, you can program that in. We've got our lights on those mirrors as well. We can crank this out, and we can also extend it out if we need to block a little bit more sun, lock it back into place. Up overhead, we do have our cabin lighting, so we can turn that one on or off. And we've also got a auto dimming mirror. So auto dimming mirror is really, really useful, especially later on at night, because what'll happen is I don't know if you remember those old flip style instead, but rather than having that old flip, it'll automatically adjust the brightness there. So really, really useful, especially driving at night, because you don't want blinding lights. And if you have it, it'll automatically dim that for you, which is really, really neat. Well, folks, that was a look at the 2021 Ford Mustang GT with Performance Pack. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and a like because it does help the channel grow. Consider subscribing with the notifications on. And if you have any questions, maybe you're not really sure which one you should look at, the EcoBoost versus the GT. If you have any other questions, drop it into the comment section, let me know, and I'll kind of talk you through the process there. But until I see you next time, make sure you stay safe.